Recording.
Alright, so this is the second part of the YouTube video that is the preliminary part for the presentation on the August long weekend, or end of August. And what we're going to be reviewing right now is dynamic warm-up and dynamic stretching, part of the overall strength and conditioning program. So you're probably already doing a dynamic warm-up with your athlete. Basically what that is some kind of generalized warm-up, slow jogging, skipping, easy choreography for the younger athletes, maybe even tag games. And the idea here is to increase the temperature and blood flow to the joints and increase joint viscosity, getting the athletes ready for their upcoming training session. Following that, we recommend dynamic stretching. The goal of dynamic stretching is to increase temperature and flexibility while maintaining neurological preparation for the upcoming activity. If you refer to page 5 in your manual, as well as Appendix 1, it gives you a greater explanation than I'm doing here on what exactly dynamic stretching is, and as well in Appendix 1, you can see some of the movements that I'm about to demo here. Okay. So some of the movements that you will see in that Appendix 1 would be things like walking quad stretch. So when you do dynamic stretching, you want to hold the movement for about 2 seconds, enough to establish a stretch, and then you move to the other side. Establish 2-second hold, and then move forward. So that's the dynamic quad stretch. Another movement that's in there, we call it the airplane. Step forward onto one leg, hold for 2 seconds. The athlete should feel the stretch in the hamstring, and then they move forward. This is different than the static stretching that a lot of people used to do prior to gymnastics training. If you still feel you need to do that more intense static stretching, and you really want to do that, that's okay, but make sure you follow up before the training session actually starts with some sort of dynamic stretching. If your athletes are more flexible, which many of them will be, you can take some of these basic movements and, for example, take it into a split. That's as good as my split is, but you get the idea of how you can make these movements a little bit more gymnastic specific for your more advanced athletes. Dynamic glute stretch, cross one leg over the other, and sit down into a glute stretch. So here I'm stretching my glute, my butt, like glute piriformis from the front. Looks like so. You're watching for the support leg not collapsing in. Another one that we've got on there is a lunge and a reach. You're going to step forward into a great big lunge, reach the opposite hand. So here we're aiming for a stretch of the hip flexor. This one's an important one for gymnasts because typically there's a lot of hip flexor tightening, a lot of hip flexor strengthening movements. We want to make sure we're stretching in the opposite direction so we don't get any overuse injuries. You can take that same movement just as a variation, lunge, and do an opposing twist, lunge, and opposing twist. You can have the athletes walk across the gymnastics floor doing that. Inchworm to get the back of the calves. Belly button in tight, lifting up, push the heels back, and then walk forward. Again, walking up. Now I'm only demoing a couple, 2 to 3 reps of each one. What you should be doing with your athletes is about 5 to 10 repetitions, closer to 10 of each one of these movements. Ginormous lunge. And that's one of the last ones in your handout. You can twist either direction, both towards and away from the knee. Slide the back foot up into another hamstring stretch, and then you step forward another ginormous lunge, reach, getting some of the back muscles working there as well, and then sliding up. So again, refer to your manual, page 2, page 5 and Appendix 1 for the dynamic stretching. Moving on, so for your warm-up, again, you've done your general warm-up, you've done your dynamic stretching. The other thing that this program recommends is core activation. Pre-training activation is both core, posterior chain activation, and postural activation. We're going to review core and posture activation right now. In the later phases, you also get into agility and plyometrics. Jeff will go over that in phase 2. So just a quick review of core activation. Throughout all of the sessions, athletes, you may be cueing your athletes to set their core, to fire the Kegel, and I'm going to go over the most basic format here. In gymnastics training, you may have been told suck and tuck. With setting the core, we want to focus less on the glutes and more just on the core. So, 2 of the easiest ways to demonstrate to your athletes how to set the core Variations on the exact same movement or exact same contraction. You're going to get the athletes to lie on their back, and what you want them to do is to find their hip bones. Most of your athletes are probably fairly lean. You're going to have no trouble do that. They find their hip bones, have them draw in 2 centimeters, down 2 centimeters. From there, make sure their shoulders are relaxed. You're going to get them to think about drawing the belly button down towards the spine, and simultaneously firing a Kegel or holding the P muscle. So you tell their athletes you're going to get some giggles. If you had to pee really bad and there's no washroom around, what muscles do you use? Okay? You're going to get the athletes to hold that for 10 seconds. As a coach, what you should be doing is walking around. Make sure they're not scrunching up their shoulders. If you know your athletes well enough and you're comfortable doing this, tap their glutes or get the athletes to do that. Make sure they're not clenching their bum cheeks. And you're getting them to hold that core activation 10 reps of 10 seconds. And then get them to release. Again, draw the belly button in, fire the Kegel, hold for 10 seconds. Okay? The athletes should feel a little bit of firmness right in this pelvic area when they do that contraction. Another variation is to do this on the floor, on your tummy. Why this is good is because the athletes can get the concept of drawing that belly button up towards the spine. They can feel that hollow. So you're going to give the same cues. Draw the belly button up. Fire that Kegel, hold the P muscles. Make sure your glutes are relaxed. And what you should see with your athletes, especially if they're wearing their bodysuits, or for the male athletes, depending on what they're wearing with their t-shirts or no shirt, you should be able to see the tummy raise up slightly off the ground. But you don't want to hollow, okay? So you just have a very little light lift of the tummy off the ground. You're holding for 10 seconds and then release. Again, 10 times 10 seconds is a really good way to make sure the athletes know how to activate that core. Postural activation, that's the other idea that we're going to run with in these presentations. That's going to be built on in every phase. What I'm going to recommend is that you basically get your athletes to get into partners, and you're going to get them to take turns placing their entire hands on each other's shoulder blades. So for example, if I was working with another athlete, what I would do is I would put my entire hand, both of them, on a partner's shoulder blade. So it looks something like this. You're getting the athletes to understand that the muscles around those shoulder blades, anchoring down and back, are the ones that we're working. Okay? So it's not up in here, the postural muscles are along those scapula. So you want to cue the athletes when they're doing this very basic movement, which is called the Dr. Jones, not to pinch the shoulder blades together. You're going to have the athletes, I'll give you the simple version first, just have the athletes bring their hands up over top of their head, pretend they're up against the wall, set their shoulders down and back, cue that core, and slide their thumbs down towards the shoulders simultaneously, trying to tuck your elbows into your back hip pockets, and then back up. From the side, you're watching that the athletes, especially gymnasts, don't hike into that lordosis or that over arch in their back. And you're just getting the athletes to slide up and down, focusing on those shoulder blades. A little bit more advanced movement, same movement, just a little bit more complex. Start arms forward, pull, flip, and slide. Those whole time I'm cueing the athletes to set those shoulder blades down and back. Okay. Jeff will review this in the workshop as well, probably. This is the Fonzie. So this is how we're going to elaborate on both those, the core activation and the posture. You can see we take the basic movement and then we throw it into a more advanced exercise. So again, I'm focusing on the same thing, shoulders down and back. I'm maintaining in that postural set, and this time the movement, we call these Fonzies. You're just going to lift the shoulders up and down while maintaining that shoulder blade set. 20 repetitions. I relax, I reset, and lift up again. Notice shoulders aren't coming up towards the ears. Okay? So again, when you join us at the end of August, we'll be advancing on each one of these concepts in both the core and postural activation that you do prior to the athlete's warm-up, and as well in the post-workout training sessions. These concepts will be elaborated on as well as teaching you how to do aerobic, anaerobic training sessions, strength training, and later on in the later phases we get into more advanced strength and power development. So look forward to seeing you at the end of August. And if you have any questions, please refer to info@performanceforsport.com. You can email us or check out our website or email me at heather@performanceforsport.com. Thanks a lot.